I need the prayer of those I love. I need the prayers of those I love. Good evening, good afternoon, or good morning to you all, whichever location you might be. Welcome to our health lecture again. I hope you will enjoy this evening's presentation by Dr. Frias. Here he is. Let's welcome him.
Good evening to all of you. Thank you again for being with us this evening to join our health lecture program. And we welcome all of you, and I want you to know that we love you. And we're always praying for you. May God continue to bless you in all your endeavors. We would like to, I hope that you will enjoy our program today. But before we get started, because sometimes we have some audience that are not able to join us in the morning, we might have some different audience this evening. So I would like to remind you again about our evangelistic seminar that we're going to have next week, actually. Next Sunday, not tomorrow, but next Sunday, we're going to have an evangelistic seminar. And I hope that you can support us or support this evangelistic seminar by praying for it, by praying for us that this seminar will be a success. And also, let me see, I'm looking for it now. It's supposed to be in your here. Was it here this morning that we look for it? Okay, maybe here. Okay. So we're gonna show you the about our evangelistic seminar. Okay. Okay, and this the this is the flyer for it. If you know anybody, especially somebody who speaks Visayan, wherever they may be, of course it's in English, but there's a Visayan interpretation, and so wherever they are, they invite them to listen to this. Maybe you can share this announcement to them. Because this is one way of enlightening them about God's truthful teachings. See, there are many people who are still in darkness, but God said that He's going to use uh, people, and that includes me, that includes you, that includes everybody. He's going to use people to make sure that this message of God desiring to save those who are lost uh, will be proclaimed all over. And so the people there, but the organizers of this evangelistic seminar are in the Western Mindanao Conference and the Misamis Occidental part of Mindanao, and they're quite busy out there. Last December, we had a seminar there, and there were 1,547 people that have accepted Jesus Christ. So I believe that we are now in the stage of the third angel's message, the three angels' message, where God's gospel message is being preached to all the corners of the world. And there are laymen and pastors there. They're going around with maybe old television, USBs, and iPad, so that those people even in the mountains who do not have access to internet, television, so on, they can just show the presentation in USBs. That's why this whole month of March, it will be baptism for those, maybe till the first week of April. It will be baptism for all those people who will be able to hear these messages from the Lord and who will decide to join his camp. So God said that we have to do our part. If you really want, because there's so much problem in this world right now, I believe that this coronavirus, it's a part of the wrath of Satan that's mentioned in the Bible. Just before Jesus Christ comes toward the end, Satan will be very angry because his time will be short. So because of his wrath, he's going to send so many problems, plagues, famines, and people are dying because of fear, and not only because of the disease, but because of fear. And it's also exciting because that means we're coming to, because there are only about three periods, three steps, three or four steps before the coming of Jesus Christ. So after the wrath of Satan, there will be the U.S. that will rise up in power to, and then the U.S. will give power to the first beast, first nation, first beast according to Revelation, which is Rome, and they will implement their agenda, which is probably, which is the, I think it's the national Sunday law. It's not, I think it is the one in the Bible. And God will close his probation, and then the seven last plagues will come. After the seven last plagues, after the seventh plague, Jesus Christ will appear in heaven to intervene for God's people in order to save his people from too much problems that are being caused, that's being caused by his enemy here on earth. We've been praying for it. So we're very close. We are in 2021, wrath of Satan, and then the rise of U.S. to implement laws that will make it hard for people, God's children. And then after that, the seven last plagues and Jesus Christ. So that's only about 5 steps away from Jesus coming. So we should be excited. But if you're not, if you haven't heard about these truthful messages, you gotta really keep your ears open now, and you gotta be serious now in listening to God's messages, which are being given, being shared by God's servants who are working for him through this now. Before we used to have presentation in the actual places, but now because of this invention is good because we can reach all over the world through Zoom. As a matter of fact, we have 1,547 people who accepted God through our 1-week seminar last December 5. So I hope that this will be a success. Pray for it and announce it to your friends and invite them to listen. But in case they miss it, you can go to my Facebook, Noel Frias Facebook. I'm sorry I cannot accept any more friends there, but I have other Facebook where I can accept. But because once you reach 5,000 friends, you cannot accept anymore. They don't allow you to accept anymore. But I have also YouTube, and it's unlimited there. And by the way, when you go to YouTube, look for Noel Frias, search for Noel Frias, and then press subscribe. That is one way of helping our ministry also. Let us disseminate all this information so that Jesus Christ can come and redeem us from the sufferings of this world and take us to that place where there is no more sin, no more sorrow, or no more death. Of course, why am I giving this announcement on supposed to be a health lecture? In the morning, we have the spiritual messages from God, Saturday morning, but this is supposed to be a health lecture. You know, spiritual messages and health, spirituality and health goes hand in hand. When Jesus Christ was on earth, he was preaching the gospel. He was preaching the gospel message of saving the lost, looking for the sinners to save them. But at the same time, he was healing all those people that he met who had some kind of sickness. So now Jesus Christ not here. We just have to learn how to fight this disease with the help of Jesus through prayers. So we're going to go ahead with our study now. And please help our ministry, pray for our ministry, pray for the success of our evangelistic seminar next week. And we really appreciate your help and support. Thank you so much. At this time, I would like to invite you to bow our heads for prayer. Father God, you are the light of the whole universe, and there is no darkness in you. Please give us light in our study of how to fight this kind of disease that we're going to study this evening. This I ask in Jesus' holy name, I pray. Amen. Now, I'm going to look for the study that we're going to have now. So this is the topic that we're going to study this evening. It's about anthrax, symptoms, causes, diagnosis, and treatment of anthrax. It is not the name is not very familiar, but when I studied it, it is also quite a dangerous and deadly disease. And so we have to learn how to prevent it and how to avoid it, if possible. So let us study this. What is anthrax? Overview here. Anthrax is a rare but serious illness caused by a spore-forming bacterium, Bacterius anthracis. Anthrax mainly affects livestock and wild game. Humans can become infected through direct or indirect contact with sick animals. So we have to be careful. I know that especially here in America, we are animal lovers, but we have to be careful, especially if our animals that we are exposed to become sick. We should try to stay away from them when they're sick. Or if you love that animal, you take it to a doctor and let them stay there. Because whether you have direct or indirect contact with the sick animal, you can also have anthrax. There's no evidence that anthrax is transmitted from person to person, but it is possible that anthrax skin lesion may be contagious through direct contact or through contact with an contaminated object, fomite. Usually anthrax bacteria enter the body through a wound or a skin, so we have to try to avoid having a wound in the skin. You can also become infected by eating contaminated meat or inhaling the spores. So you have to be careful with meat. That's why nowadays, in the last days, a lot people are little by little are even trying to eat less and less meat and maybe trying to get away from meat, because meat is not actually the original diet that was prescribed by God in the Garden of Eden. They were not eating meat. They were only eating fruits, nuts, grains, vegetables, and legumes in the early days of Adam and Eve. Meat was only added when there was when they are short of vegetation after the flood. Because remember, God, because of sinfulness, God destroyed the world with water, and it was only Noah and his family who were left. But God started to teach them how to eat meat, but only certain kinds of meat, only because God categorized the meat into clean and unclean. Signs and symptoms will depend on how you are infected. Can include skin sores. So if you have skin sores, you gotta try to treat it seriously. If you if you have skin sores and you start vomiting and you start having shock, prompt treatment with antibiotics can cure most anthrax infection. Inhaled anthrax is more difficult to treat and can be fatal. So it can cause death if you inhale. It's similar to COVID-19. You inhale this virus, and once it goes to your lungs, you cannot breathe. Anthrax is also like that. If you inhale this kind of bacteria and it goes to your nose or to your lungs, it will be difficult to treat and it can be fatal. That is why, whether you are sick or not, it's always a good idea to go to boil water, especially before you sleep, and inhale it. Inhale the steam, because somehow this kind of procedure kills viruses or bacteria that might come to your through your nose or to your throat. What is the microbe that causes anthrax? Anthrax is a serious infectious illness caused by a microbe called Bacillus anthracis that lives in soil. Anthrax became more widely known in 2001 when anthrax was used as a biological weapon and sent to the United States by mail. So a lot of this disease now, I know Satan is using people right now to invent things to kill other people. See, now you might ask, why does God allow it? See, God does not interfere so that people will learn from all these things that they are observing, so that they learn to see that this earth is not really a very safe place to live. And the emperor of this earth right now is Satan, after humans succumb to Satan's temptation. So he's the emperor. He does whatever he wants here. But if you happen to be, that's why God said, "Woe unto you, people of the earth," because Satan is there, and he can do he's doing everything he can to destroy you, to make sure that you're not saved, and sometimes he does things to kill you, things like that. But if you are connected to God, that's why it's good, even if we are in this earth that is an empire of the enemy, it's good to be connected to God, because God is still the one in control of everything. He allows things to go on here under the kingdom of Satan, but if you're a child of God and you call on God, God can always interrupt and intervene in your behalf. Satan cannot do anything to you unless God allows it. But sometimes God allows it because he has some reason to do it. Maybe by allowing it, it helps some relatives and friends. Let's say he allows you to die. It helps some relatives and friends to know more about you, or to know more about him. Like example, there was a man who had one son that he loved so much. The son loved so much, and he's growing. The son is growing. As the son was growing, and his father loves him so much, but something happened. The son got sick and he died. So the son was so he did not believe in God before, and but so the father was so sad about that, and he was so angry why it happened that way. But one time he heard about an evangelistic meeting like what we're doing next week, and the preacher read from the Bible that those who are connected to God, even if they die, they will be made alive again. And if a child dies and he's not has not reached that age of reason yet, it will depend on the parents. If the parents are saved, the child will be saved also, and God will resurrect that child again. So when the father heard that, because of his too much love for his son, and he was promised through the Bible study that he can see his son again by connecting with God, he decided to accept God's truthful teachings, and he became a child of God. And from the time on, he started looking forward to that coming of Jesus Christ, where Jesus can resurrect his son again and see him again. So God sometimes allows things to happen just to draw other people to him. But he's always in charge. When people die, he's in charge, and he can always resurrect them and save them later on, so the loved ones can see him again who are also saved. Anthrax is an acute infectious disease caused by the spore-forming bacterium Bacillus anthracis, I'm sorry. And the B. anthracis spores are highly infective and can cause death. Anthrax is an infectious disease caused by this anthracis bacterium. It is rare in Ontario, Canada. The bacteria can be found naturally in soil and can infect farm animals such as cattle, sheep, and pigs. So that's probably one reason, and pigs are the ones that are mostly susceptible to get them. That's probably why God prohibited people from eating pigs. And he even made a judgment that if you're a pig eater, God will not take you to heaven. He said that. It's a judgment that he already made. So no matter how much you love the pigs, we should try to get away. And they are also, all kinds of diseases can easily enter a pig's body. Although uncommon, a person can become infected with anthrax by contact and infected animals or exposure to contaminated animal. The symptoms of anthrax depend on the type of infection and can take anywhere from 1 day to more than 2 months, the symptoms to appear. All types of anthrax have the potential, if untreated, to spread throughout the body and cause severe illness and cause death. So it could cause death also. Anthrax is a serious infectious disease a rod-shaped bacteria known as Bacillus anthracis. Although it is rare, people can get sick with anthrax if they come in contact with infected animals or contaminated animal products. So we have to be careful even with animal products. That's why when you cook meat, you better make sure it's cooked. Try not to eat half-cooked meat or uncooked meat. Anthrax is an acute infectious disease, and these anthracis spores are highly infective and can cause inhalation, cutaneous, and gastrointestinal anthrax. Inhalation anthrax results from breathing in spores and is of great concern due to its high fatality rate. Once you inhale anthrax, the fatality rate is great. The possibility of dying is great. Anthrax is an infectious disease, and it is, like as I mentioned, it's rare in Ontario, but we have to be careful with it. What are the complications of anthrax? The most serious complication of anthrax includes your body being unable to respond to infection, normally leading to damage of multiple organs systems. It's connected to sepsis, for example. So sepsis, inflammation of the membranes and fluid covering the brain and spinal cord, leading to massive bleeding, leading to hemorrhage. Anthrax is an acute disease that is caused by a spore-forming bacterium, and the spores are highly infective and can cause inhalation, cutaneous, gastrointestinal anthrax. Inhalation anthrax results from breathing and spores and is of great concern due to the high fatality rate. Again, so the bacteria can be found naturally in soil, and it can infect farm animals such as cattle, sheep, and pigs, although uncommon. So the other viruses, a person can become infected, and if you are infected with it, there is also a possibility of fatality or death. It says here, anthrax mainly affect livestock and wild game. Humans can become infected through direct or indirect contact with sick animals. There is no evidence that anthrax is transmitted from person to person, but especially if you have a skin lesion, it is quite contagious through direct contact, through contact with a contaminated object. So it could also, this kind of bacteria can also stay in some matters or objects, and and you can get it also, especially if you have lesions or cuts in your skin. Usually anthrax bacteria enter the body through a wound or in the skin. You can also become infected by eating contaminated meat or inhaling the spores. What are the signs and symptoms? The signs and symptoms depends on how you are infected. It can include skin sores. So if you have skin sores, you try to don't treat it lightly. You might have been contaminated by anthrax. If you have skin sores and you have you're vomiting and you have shock, you could be having this kind of sickness. Prompt treatment with antibiotics can cure most anthrax infections. Inhaled anthrax is more difficult to treat and it can be fatal. So most of the things, that's why we can be careful with your nose also, what you inhale. And that's why with this coronavirus, it is probably a good idea to wear this mask, because you do not just inhale things that are dangerous, that could go to your lungs. Anthrax is very rare in developed world. However, the illness remains a concern because the bacteria have been used in bacterium attacks in the United States. So angry people who are angry at the United States, the terrorists, that's how it came to the United States, by sending this kind of bacteria to the United States and spreading it. That is the gossip that or the that I have heard about this COVID-19. Somebody developing this kind of virus and spreading it in the air. That's why it's covering the whole world. So many evil people in this world, and so on. That's why there's an advantage to really attach yourself to God, because He's a living God, and He is concerned about His children. Because if not, if you're not attached to Him, and Satan decide to play with you, or to use you as a guinea pig or whatever, and his evil servant who throw all the kinds of these diseases in the air, you could be contaminated with it through your skin lotion or through your nose. Symptoms. There are 4 common routes of anthrax infection, each with different signs and symptoms. In most cases, symptoms develop within 6 days of exposure to the bacteria. However, it is possible for inhalation anthrax symptoms to take more than 6 weeks to appear. Okay, here is cutaneous anthrax. A skin-related cutaneous anthrax infection enters your body through your skin. So if you have skin or some kind of rashes like this, that looks like this, this is how anthrax, cutaneous anthrax look like. It's deadly because it could go to your lungs, usually through a cut or other source. You might have a small cut and suddenly it becomes like that. And it is by far the most common route of disease. It's also the mildest, very mild. With appropriate treatment, cutaneous anthrax is seldom fatal. Signs, and so it's mild. You do not feel much pain. You might think it's just an infection. You might think it's just a bite of some kind of what you call that, insect, but it could be anthrax already. It's a raised itchy bump resembling an insect bite. So that's why maybe people that die on it, they just take it for granted because it looks like an insect bite, and develops into a painless sore with a black center. So something appears in your body like that, and it's painless. You do not feel it, so you can just ignore it. But it's black in the center, and swelling in the sore and nearby lymph glands. Sometimes, and also sometimes it gives you flu-like symptoms, and you start to have fever and headache. So this is quite dangerous because it doesn't cause pain. But when you start having fever and headache, be careful. A gastrointestinal anthrax infection results from eating undercooked meat. So never eat undercooked meat from an infected animal. It can affect your gastrointestinal tract from your throat to your colon. Signs and symptoms. These are the signs and symptoms. One is nausea. Start vomiting. You have abdominal pain, headache, loss of appetite, and fever. So loss of appetite. If you have coronavirus, you lose appetite. And if you have fever, you lose appetite. Abdominal pain, you lose appetite. So take a look at those things, signs, symptoms, and be careful. Here, gastrointestinal tract infection results from eating undercooked meat again. Abdominal pain, loss of appetite. Severe bloody diarrhea. So if you have diarrhea and there's some blood in it, it becomes severe or more as the stages, in the later stages of the disease. And also sore throat and difficulty in swallowing. Those are the signs. And you start to have swollen neck. See? So it's a disease that does not have to be, that should not be taken lightly. It's a serious disease. Inhalation anthrax develops when you breathe an anthrax spore. It's the most deadly form of the disease, the anthrax spores, and it is often fatal even with treatment. Even with treatment, it could be fatal. Initial signs of this are flu-like symptoms for a few hours or days, such as sore throat, mild fever, fatigue, and muscle aches. So when you start having flu-like symptoms, I believe that some of these people that are dying and being concluded as COVID-19, they might be anthrax. They might also be cases of anthrax because it has flu-like symptoms, and it also have, so you can also feel sore throat, and you have mild fever. It's mild, not even a serious fever, and fatigue and muscle ache. That's why be careful. If you have children who start to have fever, you gotta take it seriously, and the fever doesn't go away, especially, and they start having muscle ache. Mild chest discomfort. When you have a hard time breathing, you have discomfort in your chest. Shortness of breath, nausea, you feel like vomiting. You cough up, and here's another one, coughing up blood, painful swallowing, high fever, and trouble breathing. So they all have trouble breathing. And trouble breathing, shock, an acute medical condition involving collapses of circulatory system, and it could also cause meningitis. Okay, if you do not die, you could have meningitis. Injection anthrax. This recently identified route of anthrax infection has so far been reported only in Europe. It's contracted through injecting illegal drugs. So get away from drugs. Are you a drug addict or you got into drugs? Try to get away from it because it's fatal. A lot of people are dying from this drug. Initial signs include redness of the area of the injection. If you inject these drugs and start to become red around the area without an area that changes to black, and then it just turned red, and it doesn't even turn black. And then the significant swelling start to swell. If you have shocks, multiple organ failures, you start having problems with your other organs of your body, meningitis. Now, when do you see a doctor? Many common illnesses start with symptoms that resemble the flu. The chances that your sore throat and aching muscles are due to anthrax are extremely small. If you think you might have been exposed, for example, if you work in an environment where anthrax is likely to occur, see a doctor immediately and for evaluation and care. If you develop signs and symptoms of the disorder that exposure to animals or animal products or parts of the world where anthrax is common, seek prompt medical attention. Early diagnosis and treatment are crucial. If you go to an animal farm and you played with animals and so on, and you start having the symptoms, you go see a doctor. Anthrax spores are formed by anthrax bacteria that occur naturally in soil in most parts of the world. The spores can remain dormant for years until they find their way into a host. Very similar to COVID-19. Common hosts for anthrax include wild and domestic livestock such as sheep, cattle, horses, and goats. So they look for these places as a common host. So they go inside there, and then you eat the sheep that has anthrax, you eat the horses that has anthrax, you eat the goat that has anthrax. That's why you have to cook your meat very well. Although rare in the United States, anthrax is still common throughout the developing world. In places like Central America, South America, Sub-Saharan Africa, Eastern Asia, and Southwestern Asia, Southwestern Europe, and Eastern Europe, and the Caribbean. That is where usually they're found. Most human cases of anthrax occur as a result of exposure to infected animals and their meat or hides. In the United States, a few people have developed anthrax while making traditional African drums from the skins of infected animals. So it happened in the United States, in a place where they're making African drums taken from the skins of infected animals. So one of the few known instances of non-animal transmission was a bioterrorism attack that occurred in the United States in 2001. It was biological attack. 22 people developed anthrax after being exposed to spores sent through the mail. So I remember that time when people are mailing stuff and they have some what you call that viruses in the mail or bacteria, and 5 of those infected died. So that's why if you receive a mail and you cannot identify who sent it, do not just open it because they might have anthrax viruses in them. More recently, in 2 separate outbreaks, heroin users in Europe contracted anthrax through injecting illegal drugs. A total of 40 people died. Heroin sold in Europe likely comes from areas where naturally occurring anthrax is more common. So injecting drugs is also very risky. To contract anthrax, risk factor, to contract anthrax, you must come in direct contact with anthrax spores. This is more likely if you are in a military and deployed to an area with a high risk of exposure to anthrax. You work with anthrax in a laboratory setting. You handle animal skins, furs, and wool from area with a high incidence of anthrax. So, and here, the risk factors are in the military, deployed in area with a high risk of exposure to anthrax. You work with an anthrax in a laboratory setting. You handle animal skins, furs, and wool from areas with a large incidence of anthrax. You work in a veterinary medicine, especially if you deal with livestock. You handle or dress game animals. While anthrax is rare in the United States, there are occasional outbreaks in the domestic animals and wild animals such as deer. And if you inject illegal drugs such as heroin, oh boy, heroin. The most serious complications of anthrax include your body being unable to respond to infection normally, leading to damage of multiple organ system. So it's sepsis, inflammation of the membranes and fluid covering the brain and spinal cord, leading to massive bleeding, hemorrhagical meningitis, and death. Now here, prevention. To prevent infection after being exposed to anthrax spores, the Centers of Disease Control and Prevention recommends 1. A 60-day treatment with antibiotics, ciprofloxacin, doxycycline, and levofloxacin are approved for adults and children. A 3-dose series of anthrax vaccine, and in some cases treatment with monoclonal antibiotics. And other ways of preventing anthrax is, anthrax vaccine. An anthrax vaccine is available for certain groups of people. The vaccine doesn't contain live bacteria and cannot lead to infection. However, the vaccine can cause side effects ranging from soreness of the injection site and more serious allergic reactions. The vaccine isn't intended for the generic public. Instead, it's reserved for military personnel, scientists working with anthrax, and people in high-risk professions. Avoiding infected animals. If you live in or travel in a country where anthrax is common and herd animals aren't routinely vaccinated, avoid contact with livestock and animal skins as much as possible. So avoid contact with animals that are not vaccinated. Also, avoid eating meat that hasn't been properly cooked. You have to cook meat properly. And spoiled meat, throw them away if they're more than 3 days. Even in developed countries, it's important to handle any dead animal with care and to take precautions when working with a processed imported hides, fur, or wool. Current research indicates that the use of lime, whitewash, or other calcium products is contraindicated for use as a disinfectant for anthrax-contaminated sites. You can use lime or calcium products to clean places where you might suspect anthrax bacteria. Therefore, where possible, avoid using these products as a disinfectant for anthrax. Avoid using calcium products and lime as a disinfectant for anthrax sites and carcasses, or uh, they may supersede this. So avoid using those things. Maybe use Lysol, more deadly. Wear personal protection equipment when dealing with cleaning and disinfection products, such as the label of those products for personal protection information. If using sprayers for disinfecting sites and materials outside, the aware of wind direction when spraying. Avoid inhaling those spray when you spray those cleaning materials to avoid unnecessary exposure to disinfectants. Now, treating contaminated soil. If possible, remove soil from at the site of the anthrax carcass for a depth of 20 centimeters and incinerate or heat treat, because the method of not practical is not practical. Must in most situations disinfect 12.5 formalin solution and so on. That's if you work in farm areas. Treating contaminated oil, you have to treat them. You have to look for people who knows how to treat them, and you have to clean equipment. Be aware that formaldehyde solutions that are diluted to 10% have the ability to inactivate anthrax spores. According to label direction, 3.7% solution of formalin can be diluted 1 part formalin to 9 parts water to obtain 10% solution. Remove organic material, and soil from the equipment of the disinfectant. So if you work with tools and there are some dirt in the tools, you've got to clean it. Don't leave it there because they might contain anthrax bacteria. Use hot water and detergent to wash organic materials such as hair and blood from equipment. Water should be directed into the burial or burn site. If animals die, you either have to burn them or dig deeply to bury them, and then wash your hands properly. Once organic materials is removed from equipment, spray formaldehyde into the surface with a contact time of at least 30 minutes. Spray it for at least 30 minutes. Leave the disposable materials, boots, covers, latex gloves, or on site, and burn or bury with the carcass. Otherwise, materials can be disposed of biohazardous waste disposal sites of by incineration. Other disinfectants with activity against anthrax spores include chlorine, 6% household bleach solution diluted at a part of bleach to 2 parts. So if you're using gloves and you bury some dead animals, you better bury those gloves together with the animals. Don't take them home anymore and reuse them. So this is quite a serious situation here. Treatment. When an animal dies within a structured disinfectant of contaminated surface requires the following 3-step approach. Use 30% formalin, 4% glutar realdehyde. Apply 1 to 1.5 liters square meter. Apply all disinfectants for an exposure time of at least 2 hours. If using a high pressure cleaner, use caution to prevent spreading contamination. Pressure should be not exceed 1.5 liters. Disinfectant contaminated equipments, trucks, post-mortem knives, protective clothing by soaking or saturating with 10% formalin solution. Any contaminated material too infected to clean and disinfect. Straw may be disposed of with the carcass. So if you have even a dog that dies, throw the gloves together with it when you bury it or burn it. Clean all surfaces by washing and scrubbing with hot water until original color and surface are restored and wastewater is free from dirt particles, remove residual water, leave surface to dry, avoid high pressure cleaners as they could potentially spread. Because high pressure, it's not good to use high pressure what you call the hoses, because it could spread, the bacteria could spread, contamination through aerosol. If used, the water pressure should be adjusted to deliver 13 to 15 liters. Final disinfection, if blood is present, use formaldehyde. Oh, so you have to watch out, especially if there's blood. When using these chemicals, and wait for intervals of 1 hour between application. Avoid using formaldehyde and glutaraldehyde temperatures below 10% centigrade. Apply all disinfectants at the rate of 0.4. Apply disinfectant for an exposure time of at least 2 hours. Avoid skin contact or inhalation when using disinfectant. Follow the label handling instruction. Treating clothing and boots. Remove visible organic materials and soil on cleaning and boots at burn or at the burn or burial site. If you bury an animal, you should be careful with your boots, shoes, because you might take it home with the soil. Wash footwear with water and detergent when you go home, or disinfectant may be applied. Be aware that rubber boots are usually easily cleaned and disinfected. Leather footwear should not be worn when disposing of carcasses. When you're disposing carcasses of dead animals, do not use these leather boots because they are attached to them. You should wear rubber boots. Know that standard clothes washing procedures will remove any residual spores and may have adhered to for clothing. Wash clothes separately from other household laundry. The clothes that you use to bury those dead animals should be washed separately from the other clothes. Spray equipment with 10% formalin and soak overnight. See, these are really serious. You have to be careful. Facts you should know about anthrax. Anthrax is infection by bacteria. Anthrax causes skin, lungs, and bowel disorder and can be deadly. Anthrax is diagnosed using bacterial cultures from infected tissue. There are 4 types of anthrax: cutaneous, gastrointestinal, and injection. Anthrax is treated by antibiotics. Pulmonary anthrax is often lethal. It is possible to prevent anthrax. Sadly, the greatest threat of anthrax is through a bioterrorist attack. So be careful with the mails that you are opening. Somebody can send you this anthrax bacteria. Do not open mails that you do not recognize or you're not expecting. Federal, state, and local agencies are working hard to deal with this bioterrorist threat because there remain terrorists nowadays around the world and they're doing all sorts of things to kill other people. Anthrax is life-threatening infectious disease caused by bacillus. Arthritis affects animals, especially ruminants such as goats, cattle, sheep, and horses and pigs. Anthrax can be transmitted to humans by contact with infected animals. There have been a number of outbreaks over the years that are usually localized. Most recently, in Siberia, Russia, there are major outbreaks of anthrax that sickened at least 13 Siberians. What caused anthrax poisoning? The agent of anthrax is bacterium called Bacillus, while other investigations discovered anthrax bacillus. It was a German physician and scientist, Dr. Robert Koch, who proved that the anthrax bacterium was the cause of disease that affected farm animals. So you should be careful with animals, farm animals, and also when you cook them, make sure that. How long is the incubation period? The incubation period is between contacts, and the short symptoms may be relatively short, from 1 to 5 days. Like other infections, diseases, the incubation period for anthrax is quite variable, and it may be weeks before an infected individual feels sick. So you could be carrying this anthrax bacteria for weeks without a symptom. And so on. So gastrointestinal anthrax. What special threat How do you treat anthrax? Although primarily care doctor and pediatrician can treat anthrax, consultation with infectious disease specialist is suggested. Other doctors who may help diagnose and treat uh, the various types of anthrax include emergency medicine specialists, pulmonological, critical care specialists, and so on. How is the diagnosis made in anthrax? The history, including the occupation of the person, is asked or is important. The bacteria may be found in cultures, smears, chest x-rays, and so on. What is the treatment for anthrax? In most cases, the treatment can cure anthrax. The cutaneous skin form of anthrax can be treated with common antibiotics such as penicillin. If it's outside, if it doesn't go inside your body, you can treat it with penicillin, tetracycline, and erythromycin, like those process, the early start of it. Okay, but the pulmonary form of anthrax, or those that enters your body, it's difficult to treat. So, but you have to go to a doctor and they know what to do with it if you get infected with anthrax. It is possible to prevent anthrax, of course, by being careful, especially when you get in contact with animals. If you have even a dog or a pet in your house, you're going to make sure it's clean. You're going to make sure you give it a bath all the time, and you're going to make sure that it is vaccinated and so on. But even if it's vaccinated, you be careful, and be careful with because don't take them out so much and they eat dirt. They eat what you call this waste products and so on, because they could cause infection. So this is our study today. It is possible to prevent anthrax. Is there an overview of anthrax? What is the prognosis of anthrax? Let me see if I can read it. Public measures to prevent contact with infected animals are invaluable. There is a various availability for people of high risk, such as veterinarians, they are of high risk, laboratory technicians, high risk, employees of textile mills processing imported goat hair, and members of the armed forces who are assigned, especially in some rural areas with lots of animals, farm products. The Department of Defense and the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention are working very hard to prevent bacterial attack and to be prepared to deal with consequences of if one occurs. For anthrax and other infectious disease, vaccines with greater efficacy and fewer side effects are under development. Currently, most vaccines are given the injection into fat or muscle below the skin. Early studies is experimental. Animals are showing promise of an oral vaccine for anthrax. Obviously, a pill or is easier to take than a shot, and the pill may even be a safer and more effective route of administration. So what is the prognosis for anthrax? The prognosis for anthrax infections depends on the type of infection and how rapidly antibiotic treatment is initiated. The worst prognosis is for the pulmonary form of anthrax caused by inhaling spores from the environment or from weaponized anthrax preparation. The other forms of anthrax have a range of outcomes from good to poor, depending upon how quickly diagnosis and treatment occurs and how severe the infection affects the various organ system. So this will end our study, by the way. That is why you gotta be, we have to be, you have to be careful with this. You have to be careful. We have to practice cleanliness in our household. Ilagay mo. That's why there are so many things in this earth. That's why we should really work hard and try to help cooperate in spreading God's word, because this world is not very safe anymore. And this anthrax is one of those deadly diseases also. And the problem with this is that people consume it through mail. So they put them in envelopes.
Freedoms that I have today, for your spirit I feel, your presence so real. Thank you, Lord. Thank you, Lord. I just want to thank you, Lord. I just want to thank you, Lord, for everything you've done for me. Thank you, Lord.
Because
I just want to thank
He's going to intervene on our behalf.
I just want to thank you, Lord, for making me whole, saving my soul. Thank you, Lord. Thank you, Lord, for being a friend so dear, giving my sad heart cheer, for holding my hand when I could not stand. Thank you, Lord, for giving your life for me on a cross of Calvary.
Also, one way of helping us is please visit our YouTube channel and help us by clicking subscribe bell so that it will be this exposure will be shown to more people. And please share them, especially those who missed, if you missed the sermon that I preached last Saturday morning, entitled "The Sunday Sacred Mass, Taught in the New Testament." If you missed that, please go back and listen to it, because
for making me whole, saving my soul. Thank you, Lord. Thank you, Lord.
Allowed us to share this evening. I pray, dear Father, that we will be able to remember all of this information, and I pray that it will stay even in YouTube and Facebook, where we are posting them, so that people can always look up to those references. And I pray, I have 145 sermons or videos on YouTube. There's so much information out there for people to learn about you, to learn about your goodness, to learn about your second coming, to learn about how to be saved from this dying world, so that they do not die with it permanent death, which is forever, but instead we'll be able to achieve eternal life. And if we die, we're going to resurrect us and take us to the heavenly kingdom. So forgive us from where we have fallen short of your glory, dear Father, and bless us not all of us. As we separate from each other, I pray that you bless all those who have listened today, and may they benefit from the information that they have received this evening.
For my whole family, for the joys you've given me, for the shoes on our feet, plenty to I could not tell, saving my soul. Thank you, Lord.